And the fact is that at some point there will be millions of people that decide to emigrate and leave the United States. And that's an option that's got to be considered. And it's an option that people have done throughout history. And it's a bona fide consideration. I mean, if the country is simply not going to support the kind of democracy and freedom that you think you deserve, you may have to just leave.
Or we can take our republic back. Because, Max, I don't want a democracy. I mean, I want a constitutional republic where the minority is protected. But I know what you mean by democracy. You mean where the people are in charge. I want the Bill of Rights and Constitution to be in charge. Josh, Dan, Rob, Sean, Steve, you're straight ahead. 1 minute. Dan in Canada, thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Hey, Max, do you think the Castro brothers down in Cuba would renew the proposal to move Guantanamo Bay if the oil was to hit their shores? And thanks.
Huh. So, in other words, the Gulf oil, if it hits Cuba, is going to set up a conflict, and whether or not they would renew the lease on Guantanamo Bay. Is that the question? Is that a...
Yes.
That's the question.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's really the determining factor in renewing it. And why do they keep it? Why do they have it there now? Why don't they throw the U.S. out right now? They don't need the Gulf to throw out the U.S.
Well, Eisenhower called Fidel the Abraham Lincoln of the Caribbean. It's all staged.
Why don't they throw them out right now?
Because it's all staged.
No, okay, but I mean, I don't. What's the? I mean, obviously they're under tremendous threat. I mean, but I mean, it's interesting because the ecology around Cuba is pristine. Just because, so those.
Yeah, I've seen video of the scuba diving there, and let me tell you, my tongue is hanging out.
The Gulf of Mexico is becoming like the Niger Delta.
For those that don't know what the Niger Delta is, why don't you tell them?
Huh?
Tell folks what the Niger Delta is.
No, I'm saying off the coast of Niger, it's a huge ecological disaster. You've got shell oil there. You've got flaming oil, rigs out in the open. It's become a cesspool of oil because it's just they've gone in there and they've destroyed the ecology. The people are under incredible cancerous threat. And this is what we're going to find in the Gulf of Mexico.
But they had to go dump the oil, or Saddam would have gotten the yellow cake.
They're not going to clean it up in the Gulf. They're never going to clean it up. It's just going to become a festering, oozing Gulf of Niger-like ecological calamity that they're never going to clean
And you
up.
better believe they're going to take the cleanup money and give it to their cronies like Halliburton, who'll spend $15 million on a blue tarp.
Well, now that they've got some American-speaking representative for BP down there, the problem will seem a lot worse because they'll be able to speak an American accent and say, we're taking care of the problem, and there's nothing, we're going to get it up, instead of that British accent that everyone couldn't stand. Now they'll get some good old boy.
Well, it wasn't even a British accent. I know the guy is British. I couldn't even, it was like, and we will deal with that. I'm out of the yachting right now, and yes, I believe it. The little people down there. Boy, folks didn't like being called little people, did they, Max?
Well, it tells you the mentality that we're dealing with there. It's that they have a concept of entitlement, that they own everything and we own nothing, and it's in our own backyard.
All right, let's talk to Rob. Let's talk to Rob in Tejas. You're on the air, Rob.
Okay, 2 comments real quick. Max, yes or no, do you think there's really going to be an attack here in the next week or so?
Okay, I didn't get the first part of that.
Well, that's my question for Max. Is
an attack on what? An attack on what?
Iran.
Oh, well, oh, boy, yeah. I mean, it looks like it's heating up, and...
Well, I want to be clear. Hold on. We'll hold both of you over. We have to because the break's coming up. But did Max say there's going to be an attack in a week, or do you think you heard me say that? Because I'm not saying that. I mean, who said there's going to be an attack in a week?
Well, the ships are in the Gulf right now, so, you know.
Yeah, but they're there to menace right now and then start the blockade. And then if Iran doesn't allow themselves to have all their ships basically pillaged and then fights back, then that'll be the pretext. Stay there, both of you. Max Keiser is our guest. I'm Alex Jones. We're now 5 minutes into the final hour. We'll finish up with Rob, Sean, George, Steve, and then hit one or two other news items with Max Keiser and let him go. And then they're going to news blitz. And then I'm going to recap what's happening with BP and my call for criminal investigation. Then we'll talk about foreign troops in America training to take your guns. Max Keiser is our guest. Go ahead and finish up your point, Rob, in Texas about the situation with Iran.
Well, that's all I had for Max because, I was a little worried about, what that could mean for gas prices if, there's a attack on Iran. But my final thing, I'll wrap up and bounce out of here real quick. YouTube is seemingly messing with my views and keeping my video off the front page. So if InfoWars out there could mobilize and go Google or YouTube search Dennis Miller's show Info Bombed and support that video. Keep it on that front page just for a couple of days. Thank you very much, Alex. And
all right,
Max,
buddy.
Great.
All right, buddy. Keep it up. Good job. Going back to Max Keiser. We can't talk enough about Iran. I mean, Israel's saying they may strike them, and forget just gas prices. A lot more could happen. From your research, what could a strike on Iran turn into, Max?
Well, I mean, yeah, the timing, I agree with the caller. If you look at the oil prices for timing, that's usually a good indicator of, how urgent and where the situation is. And oil prices at the moment, in the past few days, couple of weeks, are not telegraphing a huge, shock and awe type event. But clearly, they are trying to collar the country with the same kind of draconian, what do you call it? When like they did in Gaza, the embargo. And I think those flotillas, actually, that are flowing into Gaza, I think are having a much greater impact on how these events are unfolding than people realize, because they are putting on the front page the real human drama of this prison that's being operated by Israel in Gaza, 1.5 million people held in the concentration camp. And this is putting onto the front pages the true tragedy of what Israel is doing in that region. And this has, I think, changed the dynamics when it comes to Israel and Iran. So I was going to ask you also, Alex, have you ever had on your show George Galloway?
Yes, I have.
I think I'd love to, if you could get him on again. He has been fantastic in exposing all of the underlying hypocrisy and atrocities that have been going on in the region. And
that's the British member of Parliament from Scotland. For those that don't know who he is, in fact, let's get George Galloway back on.
Yeah, he testified before Congress in the U.S. a couple of years ago and absolutely decimated. It's a fantastic YouTube, George Galloway in Washington, where he just tears apart the inquiry into the food for oil inquiry, and he just absolutely tears people apart in Congress and makes him look. He's a fantastic orator and a very smart guy, and he knows that region extremely well. But I just, at the top of the show when we were talking about the Wall Street Journal's idea where oil spills somehow increase GDP. I mean, this is the mindset that we're dealing with. Somehow an attack in the Middle East, another war in the Middle East, is somehow going to improve the economy in the U.S. It's absolute insanity. There's no way at this point, given the debt load that the country is carrying, that starting another war or being a part to another war is going to do anything but just speed up this calamitous dive into economic catastrophe.
Well, that's what the big central banks want, and I hope people tuning in realize this is not hyperbole. We're not hyping this. I mean, Israel's saying they may nuke Iran. U.S. and Israeli flotillas are now in place. The BP disaster is going on unabated. They're trying to pass carbon taxes. States are going bankrupt left and right. They're overturning the entire Bill of Rights and Constitution. Obama signed an executive order mandating lifestyle behavior modification, with the federal government running every facet of our lives. EU to ban construction of ordinary family homes by 2020. You must live in government dormitories. This is the Borg. I mean, when I told people years ago that it's going to be a Chinese model where we're all raised in dormitories and our kids are taken at birth like you take eggs from a chicken, as George Orwell said, I mean, this is the plan. They want to totally re-engineer humanity, so it's impossible for us to ever resist. This is the scientific elite playing God, and they're using economic warfare to bankrupt us and take control. Sean in Texas, you're on the air with Max Keiser.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be on your show, Alex, and Mr. Keiser, good to meet you. I live right next door to the largest military installation in the world, which is Fort Hood, Texas. And I'd like to tell the American people that what's fixing to happen is for real. My family was born and raised out there in the Army camp before it was the camp. And back in the 40s, the military went out there and moved them off their land and basically told them they had to leave. If they didn't leave, they was going to be imprisoned. And we can only visit our relatives' graves out in that camp on Memorial Day, and artillery shells hit out there in the cemetery and everything else. But in this little small town I live in, I'd like to say that, the military is gradually taking over.